And then there's going to be this large crowd that just kind of echoes that message and that response. Once they're in the pool, everybody's swimming.
Can you be too conversational, too intimate? Can we make the mistake of thinking that people, I mean, sort of picking up on James's point, that people don't necessarily want to click to call, they don't want to talk to someone. I mean, one of the earliest lessons I think we learned from teenagers about text is they were doing, very often they were doing it because they didn't want to talk on the phone. So it was not only that it wasn't just a means of communication quickly and briefly, it was a way of controlling the communication and keeping things brief and actually less intimate. So I'm curious if there's just as there's the temptation of being too cute, there's also the temptation on phones of being too intimate, too personal, mistaking the intimacy of the phone for thinking that our customers really want to talk to us on that level.
Yeah, I'll address that. I think there's certain brands, you know, Minnie, the TV show Pretty Little Liars, there's certain brands where the consumer base has such a strong affinity. They want to know everything. They want to talk to every character. Those are the outliers. But what we find is the single best way to make sure you're not over messaging is to ask the audience, how often do you want to hear from us? Give them the opportunity to give feedback because it is that two-way channel, and then listen to them and then evolve the messaging. A simple answer, but harder to do.
Yeah. I think it's a good point. I mean, as much as we'd love to, you know, nobody wants to hear from UPS. They want to know their package is there, right? So they don't want to have this long, drawn-out conversation about what we love and all of that stuff. I mean, it's where's my package? Can you get it to me? Or, you know, if I'm a bigger customer, where is my, you know, my cargo ship full of vaccines? So they want to know where it is. They want to get it quickly. And I think you're right. I think if you try to get too cute with it, that's not what your customers are looking for. So we look at it very simply. What's the need? You know, is there an emotional need that somebody wants to connect with the brand? If that's the case, then by all means, I think mobile's a great channel to do that with some of the brands that you talked about. If it's a very functional need, you know, or a transactional need, I need to get something done, and I really want to just, you know, the value the brand is going to give to me is that it's going to let me do this and then get back to my life, then that's where I think you should focus. So I think it's a good point.
Yeah, I think there's the obvious brands that can just play in this role and it's okay. The rest, we put really rigorous analytics programs in place, and we're constantly testing. And with email, it's very easy to see when you're actually doing more harm to the brand than good. With mobile, it's much more complex. Attribution just in general is just more complex with mobile, but we're investing a lot of money to figure out how we can track a little bit more of those behaviors, whether it's integrating brand surveys with, you know, with mobile ad units, with their app usage, with queries, and so on and so forth. We try to figure that out before it's too late, because it is their device. You know, they don't really want you there.
Hi, this is Pratt from Staples. Question for 7-Eleven you're talking about, right? So when JetBlue was talking about loyalty for the app, what drove the design behind the 7-Eleven? What are some of the characters that, is it coupons and location, or is it like, what's the stickiness there? Thank you.
So our client at 7-Eleven is they're a visionary company, right? I mean, they've got an entire group that's focused on what is the guest experience going to be like in a digital world. So how does that change retail? And when they gave us the brief, I think they were extremely smart in that they said convenience is the driver, right? We are a convenience retailer, we're a convenience provider. That needs to be the driver behind the app, and that needs to drive the user experience. It needs to drive the content and the functionality. So you know, we made it very simple. You can get to any section within one swipe. So you can swipe left, right, up, down. You can get to really anything that you're looking for, one hand with a coffee in another. So they wanted to make that the key driver. Coupons are obviously a big part of that because you know, convenience is about getting a convenient deal. So that's very prominent. But at the end of the day, it's where is my nearest 7-Eleven? You know, I'm looking for something particular. So you just swipe up on the app. It pulls in all the 7-Elevens nearest you, And like I said, you know, down to the point of this is a, you know, a minute walk away as opposed to some sort of abstract, even though, I mean, we all know how far away 1.5 miles is. In a city like San Francisco or, you know, even Austin, that's a big difference. Do I have to actually get in my car, or can I just walk across the street and pick up a hot cup of coffee?
Good. Okay, I think that's a wrap. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks, guys. Is that beard new?
It is.
I know Ben from way back, and I saw him up. I hadn't seen him yet, and I saw him up here with a beard, and I thought, what the hell? Jordan, you want to bring your panel up? So you know, big data wasn't called big till just a few years ago, and it probably not coincidentally that it started being called big when one of the biggest gushers of all came online, and that was social data, which was unstructured but voluminous and allowed a level of intimacy, of understanding of the user that we had never really seen before. That's about to be taken up to an even greater degree by mobile than even social media did. In a digital world, in a digital mobile world, we essentially sweat data. And if any of you have been tracking what Apple's been patenting lately, apparently your sweat is going to be a data point pretty soon. They're working with a whole series of sensor-based technologies that will literally be sensing both motion and a whole physical attributes. So the idea that we're about to see a mountain of data come online, even more than we're already getting, which is voluminous, and how that plugs in to this parallel world, this parallel evolving world of data-driven marketing, of big data, of all the ways in which marketers need to take these data points and not only make greater sense of them, but use them to do some of the things we've already been talking about this morning. One of the big picture on the big picture to-do list for big data is that it gives you a more intimate understanding of who your consumer is. It gives you a more granular understanding of that path to purchase. In many ways, it's something that mobile helps activate. So understanding the kinds of data that mobile is casting off, what we can do with it, and especially how it integrates into all of these systems that are evolving at the same time, is another way, perhaps a more formalistic way of understanding the consumer, of letting the consumer take the lead, is getting that deeper profile. To take the lead on this panel, I brought together a bunch of folks who are dealing with data in a lot of different ways and integrating it in a lot of different ways. And to take the lead on this, I've asked an old friend of ours, Jordan Green, who is a veteran of these summits, but also of mobile. He is the principal of mobile at Mela Media. He works with a number of brands in bringing together the brand with a set of strategies and mobile solutions like Madison Square Garden, Publishers Clearinghouse, and IDT Telecom. And he's a real lifer in mobile. We've been in it since what, 2000 at least? 98, longer than me. Jordan.
All right, good morning. I guess we're batting cleanup for this morning. So at Mela Media, we advise our clients on how they can build real strategies based on the realities of the mobile marketplace. Often, you know, it's not what clients want to hear on the first side, but it's important that they understand what's real and what isn't. Personally, I've been in mobile now, and I did this math for Steve a couple months ago, about 15 years now, which is a scary number. And for at least the last 8, we've constantly debated whether or not we're in the year of mobile. Well, I'd like to move past that at this point and just say that what I think this year is the year of mobile data. Or to be more specific, it's the year of mobile insight. Because the data without any type of insight really is worth very little. And with mobile, we're seeing sheer volumes of data that can be absolutely enormous. Much more so than what we saw with their traditional digital brethren. So this requires much more educated eyes and much more mobile understanding in order to generate real value out of what's behind the scenes. So the potential for companies now to get buried in an avalanche of data is much more likely now than ever. Funnier or worse, depending upon your point of view, is that some companies become so enamored and so excited about the fact that they can now collect all this new data that they forget to answer the question, what do they plan on doing with this mobile data? Or to put it another way, what can you learn from it, and how do you put it to work? So our Coke CMO, I think, put this perfectly recently when he said, data is like crude oil. It requires refining before it can become gasoline. So when we begin working with the client, what we begin to stress with them is what we call our holy trinity of a mobile data foundation. The first being carrier, the second being operating system and version, and the third being handset. Because you need to get the basics right before you can start doing the fancy stuff like geo on top of it. So to give some organization to the discussion here today, my hope was that we would do it move everything into 3 functional buckets. The first being data collection, the second being insights, that is, what data is important, what isn't, and what can you draw from that data itself, and perhaps most importantly, how do you take that data and insight and put it into action in a real way? So our panels here really come from very different walks of life, and I'm hoping that they can shed some light on what they're doing with data on a real life basis with this new mobile data crunch. So on the panel, and I'm going out of order, so I apologize, Arthur Coleman is the chief strategist for 4Info, and this isn't your father's 4Info anymore. The second is David Ip, from Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, soon to be Montana as well. Mo Char, the Director of Strategy and Emerging Technology at Lenovo, and Jim Waltz, the Director of Mobile Strategy for Alliance Data, which powers many of those retail branded credit cards that we've all applied for over time. So Jim, I wanted to get started with you. As we started talking, you were talking to me about specifically what you referred to as your consumer journey. For your interactions with an end user, where does that journey start?
So first, for people we have a series of companies, and the company I'm talking about is a retail group. So they furnish the private label card for over 100 top retailers. So you walk in any mall, you probably see 15 of our clients. And so traditionally, we're gathering up a lot of data because it's a credit process. We're seeing transaction data, so we're gathering a lot of data. And the good news, big data, the good news and the bad news is it's big data, right? So what do you do with it gathering? So traditionally, we would do shopper profiles, consumer information. We provide that information back to our retail customers who have their own back-end CRMs and are gathering their information. And they put this stuff together and they try to do a better job targeting and driving it. So when mobile entered the scene for us, we looked at that shopping journey as related to the card and says, where will mobile impact that from the awareness to engagement to the transaction to the loyalty on all those physical and digital touch points within the retailer, whether it's online or in their brick and mortar. And the first thing we wanted to do was to, as we moved from plastic to mobile and from the traditional doing credit at the point of sale where nobody likes giving out their personal information while people are around them and finding out they're being rejected, moving that to where coming up with capabilities where now you can do the credit within 5-6 seconds on your phone in the privacy of a dressing room or scan a QR code. What we really want to do with the data is find it to, whether it's a virtual card or mobile marketing, we wanted to find out, how could we improve that consumer's journey, that user experience first before we just started, doing our backroom analytics and predictive modeling and sending out stuff thinking we knew you. We took the approach that if we do this right and have a nice engagement, and let me cut back to it. We've done studies for years that shows that a person with a private label card is more loyal, they spend more, and they're more apt to want to engage and interact with the retailer. So that consumer experience, we wanted to take that data, and we thought that if we gave them continually improve that experience with them, that instead of pushing out data, we would kind of really hold back and use data based on what the consumer wants. Let the consumer tell us what they want. So we're going to kind of take a different approach. And so we moved, everything we're doing in mobile is really in an agile environment. We're continuing tweaking it, redoing it. We do a lot of feedback sessions. So we're continually improving the mobile websites. If it's a virtual card and it's within a native app or in a mobile web format, we're continually tweak that. So the first step is we're going to take that data and get to a point where we think it's a great user experience. and again, if you look at the plastic card, if all we do is mobilize that and it's just you know, a mobile bump swap or a swipe or tap at the point of purchase versus a plastic card, people are going to use their plastic card because they've been trained to do it. It's fairly easy. So we're learning a lot from that data, and we're kind of taking that data first, and then we're going to go back to our big data that we have in the CRM systems of our customers and start meshing that data in. So not very succinct, but kind of gives you a flavor.
It did, and you said that roughly 30 to 40% of all of your retail card holders who go in stores, they don't actually have the cards with them.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard the syndrome fat wallet. I mean, unfortunately, if I probably poll the people out here, we all have probably 10 or 12 cards, so how many are we carrying? So a lot of our consumers don't carry their card, so they'll go up to the point of sale and say, I don't have my card, could you look it up? Versus a phone, showing that phone, whether pulling that account number off of it or scanning a 2D barcode, or if and when NFC appears in a retail environment, another technology for doing it. So that's proven our consumers really like that they don't have to carry the card.
Okay. Mo, for you, your CRM data with any interaction with a customer at one point starts with an email address, right?
Yes.
From there, what else are you layering on top of that from a traditional digital element and from a mobile element that's starting to give you a little bit more insight as to what your consumers are doing, how they're acting, how they're interacting with you?
So mobile is adding like new element to our understanding of user experience. So we run a study where we took identifiable consumers when they came to our mobile experience and tried to see how they behave with some of our content. And what we found out, for example, is that there is a new variable which is motion, how they move on the screen, like the touch screen, that we didn't know about before on our traditional experiences, meaning desktop and other experiences. And for one example is one of the users we were watching is they went to a page where they expected that the page is going to be longer. So they were scrolling back up and down, and even if they were in the bottom of the page for about 45 seconds and did it for 20 more times. That gave us an insight that, you know what we're showing as content and the way how we're making our page usable didn't give them the idea that, you know, the page ended over there and they can move somewhere else. So from a traditional metrics perspective, like for example, if you look at time on site on time on page, that person's engagement with that page would look good. They spend a lot of time on our page. That means they were consuming a lot of content. They were happy with that page. But when you look at it from a touch experience, the movement on that page, you see that it wasn't a good one. They weren't really happy because they didn't know what to do. So that was just an example of new elements that we're adding to our big data warehouse of understanding customer experience with our mobile or online entities.
Right, and it has to help you shape your next iteration of your mobile sites one way or another so you can address that at least a little bit stronger, right?
So yeah, exactly, and it definitely is. So right now, for example, we're working on a big campaign. It's going to be announced very soon. And we have the requirement for our agencies, for our creative agencies, are taking into consideration some of the learnings we've seen on mobile experiences, so that it's easy for us when we create adaptive or reflective adaptive experiences across different screens. We keep that behavior in mind.
So David, going back to the basics, recently you kind of looked at the basics of specifically operating system of one of your units. And I was able to kind of give you some basic insight as to what you thought was either an anomaly or an opportunity, right?
Yeah, so actually wanted to thank you for your opening remarks. The whole notion of the year of mobile, I think that's an issue that's already dead. Went away with December 21st, kind of the Mayan calendar apocalypse theory. I think where we currently are in 2013 is, to add to your year of the mobile insights, I would say we're in the year of mobile maturity. And where you are as an individual, as a brand, and moving across the maturity model, I think data helps you get there. For us, an interesting number that helps prove mobile and emerging technology professionals across, I think, would help, is the fact that numbers and getting funding has always been a challenge. Typically in the digital space, web is funded very well, and mobile is kind of maybe a tenth of what the web is. So for us internally, we really looked at across qualitative and quantitative data to help us with our funding issues. But one of the big numbers that we found was based on our current mobile web usage, it's almost 15% of all of our traffic. And from doing some number crunching, we actually found that by the end of 2014, more web traffic would be coming from our mobile and emerging devices, mobile, tablets, and even gaming devices than from a desktop device. So that's one of the big numbers that when our CMO saw those numbers, some of that funding and some of our challenges from a governance buy-in perspective has shifted, and numbers are very, very good for us.
When you see a split on your operating system, if you look into that data specifically, between your Android and iOS split, in general, what are you seeing?
Right now, I think we're seeing about a 60-40 split, so it's not really too far. So
60-40 towards iOS?
iOS and then 40% Android. We have seen those numbers shift recently, so the iOS numbers are starting to go down, and the Android numbers are starting to creep up a little bit, and I think that's kind of when you look at the industry trends in general, the number of new devices on the Android platform are starting to grow, and lower cost devices, lower barriers to entry. So we continue to predict that iOS will continue to be important, but Android will have increasing importance, especially from our perspective in the insurance space. So I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with healthcare reform, but Q3 of this year, there's the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. And during those times, there's a requirement to purchase insurance. So most of us in this room, it's probably not that important because you are employed and you have group insurance. But for those that are under lower income level, so subsidy eligible, if you make around 200% of the federal poverty level, or actually less than 400% of the federal poverty level, you're going to actually get a subsidy from the government to purchase insurance. So what that really means is those users at that level are not going to have the iOS devices. Our quantitative and qualitative research has shown us that 20% of our future demographic that's going to buy insurance, the incoming exchange market, they're going to, 20% of those are going to have Android devices. There's not a lot of emphasis on iOS, so for us, it's going to be important. And data has dictated to us that it's important to focus on Android moving forward.
And just to make a point, a lot of those folks live on mobile only, I bet.
Absolutely. That's another thing that we've done recently is some qualitative research on the mobile-only user. So context is a big issue and something that people are talking about the next evolution of mobile maturity. So for us, we're taking a very different approach. Not necessarily different, but on the web, we actually have a one web philosophy. So a lot of the strength of context comes from location currently, but it can get really, really stronger in the native app space. For us on the web space, we really feel like context, it's hard to predict. So I think earlier we had a discussion with the Obama campaign about predicting context and not really being able to assume what people are going to be doing. There's a stat out there, another number stat, 60% of people use their phone in the bathroom. I'd say the other 40% are liars. I mean, it's really hard to predict what people are doing on a mobile device. So I think the thinking 2 years ago was, all right, think about the mobile user on the go, but they're not always on the go anymore. They're sitting on the bathroom, they're in front of the couch, they're at their desk at work. So for us, really having a standard approach and not assuming context is something that data has proven to us.
I think you just reminded all of us in the room that when somebody wants to show you pictures of their kid, don't take the phone from them. Yeah. And for all of us who have been in the mobile world for a long time, 4Info has been a staple for a long time, and we all equate them with the SMS world. SMS for them has now become a cash cow, and Arthur and his team have literally reinvented not just 4Info, but the way that you're looking to target specific households.
Right, because the problem that we have is sort of like ForRent and Grainger. And unlike you, where you may get a login, you may get a registration, we have no such information. And so we're dealing with the problem of identification of audiences in the advertising world on a mobile device, where cookies don't last more than 7 days for web. And of course, now with privacy, UDIDs are gone. And even if they were there, people hash the UDIDs. So when you go from a different publisher and you get that ad request, that's how our world works. The publisher sends us, many of you run ad servers, we get that ad request in. That number will be different from every publisher because they've hashed it. So the question is, how do you know that that person is that person? And then the question is, well, what do you do? What do you mean? I know that device, but how do I know that person? And different people in the industry have approached the problem differently. Many have tried to go at the issue by saying, I want to try to get direct match with the device and some kind of first-party data or some kind of third-party data. We get that. A lot of people in the web come to us and want to match first-party data, and they try to apply web principles to the mobile space, and it just doesn't work. So other folks have said, let's try location. Because I know where people, this is like Jaiwire and PlaceIQ, they will say, let's use location, and we'll figure out how people have their location context. That's what we know about them, and we'll serve them. We'll say, we'll segment those people. We'll say, we see them at night in the business district down by a nightclub. So they're not there for business. They're there for entertainment purposes, and we'll know something about them, and so we'll serve them an ad based on that. What we looked at is granularity of data. Okay, so to be good with big data, the first thing you have to do is ask the second question. So one of the things marketers do is they ask the first question, which is, tell me something about this. But the data analyst goes to the next step, which is why? And that leads to a whole series of questions. And the second thing you have to be good at is working with small data. And so the question was, where could we look and find data that we could manage? And where was the data at level of granularity that we could work with? Because if you don't have the right level of granularity, you can't find anything. And the answer was third-party data sets from people like DLX and your folks tied to the household, from television days, from online days. It's all tied to the household. So even if we could identify and match a device, we couldn't tie the data to it at any finer level of granularity than the household at this stage of the development of mobile. So what we said is, okay, how do we go about finding something that will last in mobile? And the answer was, people don't move. They move once every 5 to 7 years on average. And so if we can tie a device to a household, we can then tie the device to the third-party household data. And then not only, and speaking of what this is not the year, I don't believe this is the year of mobile maturity. I think it's the year of mobile disappearing, doing a disappearing act where it's no longer a standalone item. So the goal was, if we could look at household data, we can tie that to the online world, same data, and we can tie it to the television world. And suddenly you've got that integrated platform. So that's what we did.
Not to mention, you're also going back upstream in terms of your media buyers, because they understand how to buy this stuff because they've been buying TV that way for the last 50 years.
And so you don't have to no primary market development. Exactly. That was the other benefit of it.
So you've moved past the idea about a UDID, and we can stop arguing that. You're looking at, you're giving it like a household cookie.
Basically, the household is the cookie. Exactly. And then the question is, how do you tie the device to the household? And that's the real interesting data problem that requires a lot of predictive modeling.
You know, one of my favorite things about technology just in general is when something new comes along and makes the old guard, whether it be an industry or a company, just change completely. So like when Sirius and XM were introduced, magically that 100-year-old industry of radio now became terrestrial radio,
right.
And which is just so insulting to them in and of itself. Or when Google introduced its mapping app for smartphones, I don't think anybody was actually going out and running to buy their Garmin devices anymore, you know, put them on the brink of extinction. Now, while not on the same scale, inside the Blue Cross Blue Shield world, David's team was able to unearth mobile data that actually started changing process inside with your new PALS program. And this is more specifically around privacy. Can you kind of share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So internally at our organization, mobile is kind of disrupting the entire organization. You know, people say it's the glue, it's the thing that cuts across the organization. So for us, as we started rolling out new mobile programs, we realized that there was a lot of effort in terms of figuring out the privacy. We'd have separate meetings for each campaign, each program, and each product that we roll out. And then from a security standpoint, we have to constantly do assessments and architecture. So essentially we helped our organization as an enterprise, and we established a group called PALS. It's Privacy, Audit, Legal, and Security, where they are kind of, we bring new products and ideas to them all in one time so that they can assess and they can kind of throw darts at our new programs and projects, all from the different angles, from sort of privacy. So CalOPPA is a big thing that people are talking about now in the mobile space. Delta recently got sued and they're getting fined $2,500 per download because they didn't have a privacy policy and they didn't adhere to CalOPPA. So these are things that are important to us as we roll out new products and new mobile apps. So establishing this PALS organization was fantastic, and it was so successful that our organization actually rolled it out enterprise-wide now. So it's not just a mobile thing, it's actually across any new product and service.
And PALS was much nicer than the first iteration of SLAP.
Absolutely.
Right. And Mo, you guys look at privacy. Is it a natural extension from the digital world into the mobile space? Are there new variables in place now for privacy? How does it affect you guys?
It does affect us a lot. I mean, trying to build a relationship with our customers, especially in markets like the US, where our brand awareness is not as high as in China and globally. We want to be out there perceived as being a good brand, a brand that cares about customer privacy, and we manage our PII. So one of the reasons why we haven't really developed a lot of applications or a lot of content in mobile is because we haven't really figured out the right infrastructure and technology and the rules and the governance that we need to build internally so that we are at the state of the art when it comes to managing PII information on the mobile and other platforms. So it's very important for us.
And Arthur, from your standpoint, now you're going even a level more. You know about my house now.
Yeah, I know more about you than you ever want me to know.
I feel very uncomfortable.
You should. You should. But what most Americans don't realize, this has been going on since the 50s. Since the credit agencies, Experian and these guys have been doing it, when direct marketing, when catalog shopping really started. And so privacy was dead a long time ago. But what's also interesting, we hear about privacy often, and we just implemented Trustee as a privacy model so that you can opt out of behavioral targeting very easily. And we know from the industry, which you'd be surprised at, is how many people you actually get to do it, will do it. It's not that many. There's a lot of noise in the industry, just like there was at the beginning of online. I was there when this was all happening, and I'm more of the Mark Zuckerberg model on this, that it's going to be a lot of noise short term, and long term it's going to go away as more people get used to it. But today it definitely is an issue, and we're very careful because we have where you are and who you are, and God forbid we should put those two together in a way that we can identify a lot about you. It's not allowed. It would be a disaster for us.
You know, one of the great things that I like about mobile is that it allows us really to not just say what is relevant, but what's relevant right now. So from a retail standpoint, you know, somebody who's looking for a computer today, we can't call them interested in computers 6 months from now because they may have made that purchase. Now, Jim, you guys were doing a really kind of advanced test involving text messaging for how to drive people into retail space using third-party carrier data.
Yeah, so we saw a lot of tension. Obviously, our retailers are very interested in geolocation, geofencing technology. They're not quite sure what the ROI is beyond return on image, but that will come. So I think a lot of attention is given to a shopping app where they're using the GPS embedded in the app, which means you have to load that app, you have to have somebody who's engaged using that app. And quite frankly, other than a handful of retailers, most retailers who have, I wouldn't say their apps are lousy, they leave a lot to be desired. So we took an approach that we do believe, we had a gut instinct that mobile could drive impulsive buying, that it could actually influence incremental visit to retail, and possibly increase in tender share and purchase size, basket size. So we took an approach of strictly using text, so it could hit anybody's feature phone, hit 100% of phones, and instead of getting granular down to the location of a retailer, we did something around malls, again, where a lot of our retailers, and we took 6 of our retailers, and we did this campaign from Black Friday through the holiday season. We'll be releasing a white paper on it soon, and Steve will get first shot at that white paper. I promise him the results. So I can't share everything with you, but we not only did the white paper, we did consumer follow-up surveys. We had an A/B testing group. We took the same questions to people who didn't participate, and we're collecting all that data. But it was fairly simple. They were allowed to, we asked them to opt in because of location-based alerts. And then as they approached those malls, they got an incentive if they used their card during that day, time and location. They were put into a sweepstakes, a shopping spree with that particular client. And we asked them, you know, how many messages would you want to receive during that period of time? We found out 3 to 5 was the response back we were getting. We timed it so that they went. We did a lot of things. And a lot of it was just gathering up information that we could take to our retailers and say, listen, this isn't some vendor talking to you about because they're trying to sell you something. This is actually what we're seeing, because we were able to tie that to our CRM, our database. Did they make a purchase that day? What size was that purchase compared to if they weren't involved? So we're collecting all that data, and the results are coming back fairly positive, and we're going to be excited sharing that. So it was a simple campaign. We found a real difference between privacy with people. It's one thing it's like I can see you outside my store, come on in, versus, oh, I see you're at Easton today, Jim, use your card, etc. So it was very interesting, the data that we collected with that and bringing the back-end data.
What about tracking? So one of the issues we found in privacy is, for geofencing, is, okay, tell me who's been near my store last week or to a competitor store last week, which means tracking where people have been over time. What did your customers tell you about that?
Yeah, well, we stayed away from that. Again, we're really approaching a lot of what we're doing with a great respect for a consumer because of our position there, you know, and because we sit on a lot of data. We really want to get back to letting the consumer, our card users, tell us what they want, when they want it, how they want it, on what device. We really want them to come back versus taking our data and saying, oh, let's really target them and push this to them because we think they'll react. So we're going very careful. So this first step, and we're doing a series, some follow-ups on this. This first step was really going into that mall. Were they really going to, you know, someplace over here, and could we influence them and go to that retailer with this call to action? And we saw a lift in visit, and we saw a lift in spend. And I won't, you know, be a while before we'll put those numbers out. The surveys back from those users was, and they were questions like, does mobile influence your purchase? You know, these general questions, those were very positive. So we're really excited. You know, we think the location, what mobile brings into the big data is that time and location relevancy. And if you can factor that in with the rest of this data and start giving people, you know, what they want, when they want it, how they want it on the right device context, then you're hitting that marketeer's dream.
Right.
Because we know the consumers, we know our card consumers want to find things, get things, do things, learn things, and if you do those right, they'll start interacting, transacting with you. So that's what we're trying to address with the card program.
You have to be geological, is what you have to be.
Yeah.
So another thing about the way we approach this, and you have to think about it from a consumer marketing perspective, is what's more powerful? First of all, knowing where you are or knowing who you are, okay? Knowing where you are is a good signal, but it's noisy, right? Knowing who you are is a lot stronger signal, a lot cleaner. But then, thinking geologically, geo-logically, if you can combine who you are with when and where you are, and that gives you sentiment, intent, context, that is the one thing that mobile has over any other medium that is just incredibly powerful. And so that's the way we've kind of approached that same problem.
And from a slightly different standpoint, Lenovo, you guys sell products, but you're selling it through retailers that aren't necessarily your retailers.
Exactly.
What are you seeing from mobile data, from your mobile data internally, of what are people doing on their mobile devices, And then how do you know that they are following through and moving them into a retail environment or to your e-com site, possibly on a PC?
That's a good question, and I was thinking about it when Jim and Arthur were talking about the using mobile and geological. I like that statement, geological. So that's a big issue for us, especially here in the States, where we don't have stores. In China, we have a lot of stores. In fact, in China, we have more Lenovo stores than Starbucks combined worldwide. So we have a lot of stores. People go to our stores.
Can I geofence you for advertising purposes?
Yeah. You could. But here in the States, we sell most of our products either B2B or B2C via Best Buy, Walmart, Costco, and other big retailers. And what we see in our data is that a lot of consumers are coming to our mobile device and they're learning a lot about our products. In fact, 80% of their customer journey is happening on the mobile device before they go to a retailer and purchase. But it's really hard for us to tie that information back. Retailers, of course, are very protective of their data. They don't want to share it with us, and we understand why. But it would be really nice to understand, how do we tie that information? How do we tie behavior on mobile? And the fact that customers, when we ask them, they're telling us, yes, I am researching information. I'm learning about your product. I'm looking for promo deals on the mobile device, and then I'm going to a retailer to do the purchase.
And that last 20%, that's the holy grail. So
Exactly.
you can see the conversion, right?
Yep.
Right.
What are you doing after the fact? So now you know that they made a purchase with you. And then maybe let's say they either bought it through your website or they registered a product with you. Do you do follow-ups with them? For example, if you sold them a laptop, are you then turning around to try to sell them accessories to go behind it?
Yes, so we do follow-ups as soon as they register their product or we get information about them that they purchase. We try to send them information about accessories to increase our match rate for the main machine they buy. And so that's a great opportunity for us. We're trying to understand what they're buying from retailers, and this is incremental. What they're trying to buy from retailers, and then provide them with accessories and services via SMS or other strategies that we scoping out right now that could drive them to buy from our website, Lenovo.com.
Right, because in theory, buying a computer through a phone might seem a little daunting, like buying a car. I know Auto Trader was up here earlier. But something that are big purchases may seem a little daunting from a mobile device, but buying a mouse or a keyboard or a cover, is that something that is more likely to happen in a mobile environment?
It's more likely, however, so we just did a study where we paneled 450 users around the States, and we asked them about their price sensitivity, their intent to purchase big machines, small machines from the web. And the message that we got from them was that, you know what, I don't care how much it costs, as long as it's easy for me to buy it, and at the same time it's very secure. And security was the #1 issue for them. It was huge. It was very surprising. It seems like they're making phone calls on their mobile device, they're sharing pictures, they are on Facebook, but when they come to dealing with retailers online, they're worried about their security, they're worried about their personal information, their financial information, and that's one of the main drivers that takes people from mobile or desktop to a physical retail store.
I'm going to open up to questions out here. There's one over there. Just while we're waiting for the microphone to get there, my last question for you, Mo, is your data actually showed you that your users don't care whether or not you have an app or a mobile website.
Yes, exactly. So they don't have any preference between mobile and app. In fact, if they were given the choice, they will move towards using a mobile optimized website, because the feedback we got from them was that a lot of the smartphone users have kind of saturated their number of apps on their phone. They don't want to add another app they have to maintain, they have to delete later if they don't use it, especially when it comes to a retailer like us or an e-com website like us. We don't really have a lot of touch points with them. Our communication with our customer is very short-lived, pre-purchase, during research, post-purchase, providing them with some services and warranty, helping them with support, and then that's it.
Hi, my name is Chris Needham. I'm with Fidelity Investments. This is a question for Arthur. Arthur, you mentioned that you're trying to connect targeting on mobile to head of household, or to household.
To household.
Household. And this is something that we struggle with a great deal in financial services, because household gets us into a lot of trouble with 40% plus now of head of household being actually the women who own the investments, and yet we're sort of talking to them as if they were men, and that gets you into a lot of trouble. So household is a lovely ideal. Can you talk more though about how there's still that huge tension between actually household and then who actually is the driver of the household?
Right. We have a saying in our company.